All right, thank you everybody for coming for the first session of Star Wars Edge of the Empire, Sorcerers of Rhand. So I'm excited to get started. Hopefully we can get everybody's libraries up and going and get through some character creation. Moon, let me know if here in a few minutes if it doesn't load still.
Okay, I'm just gonna try and like reload the entire thing.
Okay.
See if that helps.
All right. And while we're doing that, I don't know if everybody has kind of decided on kind of what role that they're wanting to play. So I know you guys have several concepts that you guys were thinking. Maybe when we want to go ahead and kind of hash that out real quick.
Yeah, well,
Nose goes.
we can't see each other's noses.
Nose
Trust
go.
me.
I was mainly looking at either doing a pilot type character or a cunning based investigator detective type character.
Okay.
And I've been looking at doing either something more mechanically inclined, like an engineer, or outlaw tech, or doing something more melee.
Okay. How about you, Rainbow?
I was kind of thinking either doing a droid human type build, but I know you and I talked about that and it was kind of definitely my second choice, and my first choice is going to be, I think, some kind of performer or smuggler human. I don't know. Her name is Arden. That's all I've got so far.
Okay. And I think that leaves just Moon.
Yeah, still nothing on the library yet. But I was thinking about maybe doing like a Brainiac Force user.
Okay. Melee, ranged.
Probably melee. Still using like a lightsaber.
One of the lightsaber forms, or
The one I was looking at, it was in Force and Destiny, was like the Mystic Seer, so that kind of like draws more into like the Brainiac role-playing side, but also have like elements of combat.
Okay, right on.
yeah, I'll have to look. I know some of the different lightsaber forms in this gave you the thing that you could change the stat of lightsaber to be a different one. I think there might have been an intelligent.
Yeah, I thought I saw that earlier, but when I tried to look for it again, I couldn't find it.
I'll look around, but yeah, I mean that sounds cool. I know there's a lot of cool options for that.
Yeah, I
If
got
I
all
go
my.
with my melee Jedi, the seer would probably be the second class that I go into with that one. There's
Okay.
a lot of fun options.
It's the Surisu Defender from the Guardian.
Okay.
Like Obi-Wan.
you can use intelligence as your lightsaber stat.
Do you guys have races picked out?
Human.
Yeah,
I-
I've got a couple of different ones depending on what option I want to go with.
My hot shot's I'm going to say this wrong, Mary Allen, is that right?
Yeah, Mary Allen.
And the detective is a Togruta.
Okay.
I was looking at I think it's called a Syrian.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Like Kiadi Mundi
Yes.
or Darth Plagueis.
So you're going to have a big head.
Used it as a weapon. All right. So I think we're going to just have to decide on a character concept before we can really get started. First thing would be race. 'Cause that's pretty much going to set up everything.
I'm trying to rename our starship and it won't let.
Don't worry about the starship quite yet. It's coming.
So I know what Rainbow and Moon are doing. Did you narrow your ideas down at all?
I'm leaning towards either the shipbuilding engineer or the steel-hand adept jet.
Would the shipbuilder actually drive ships at all?
Not really especially well. They'd really basically be more the engineer type.
Well, yeah, okay. I think I'll just go ahead and commit to the pilot then, since it doesn't seem to be stepping on any toes.
Sound. Thick lad.
You know you love him.
Oh, yeah. All right. So if you've decided on a race, your race are going to give you your starting ability scores, as well as your wound threshold, strain threshold, starting XP, etc., etc. And I believe within the library, if you go under characters, there's a species template that has all the information that you would need if you don't have a book handy.
Bless.
So you just fill them in. There's not dragging with this
I don't
version?
know if you can drag and drop. I have not tested it myself.
Looks like you can just type it in. Oh, if you bring it up, like the template, it comes up with like a fake character.
Mm-hmm.
If you grab the square, it looks like it drags.
Yeah, I just don't know where. Like I tried and it didn't seem to like
I
drop.
I think because this isn't officially supported by Fantasy Grounds, this is like a moderated built mod from one of their like I don't know, major contributors or whatever. They could only put in so much information. So you probably will have to hand type some things in. But once we get that done, it should work. I think like skills and that sort of thing you can drag in. Do you want me to wait on kind of the core mechanics of this, or do you want me to kind of go over some things while we're building characters?
Going through it while we do it doesn't sound bad.
Okay.
Mhm.
So we'll just talk about a few things that come along with the species. All right. So, of course, you get your starting stats across the top. Wound thresholds. Think of wounds as, I guess, hit points would be the closest thing. That's how many hits that you can take until you drop. It is not dead. You just drop. You basically become unconscious. Strain is a very similar thing. Just doing any actions in the system can cause strain on your character. Think of it as a little more of a mental type strain. If you max out your threshold on that, you will also fall unconscious. Starting XP is the amount that you get to spend on abilities for your class and a few other things. And then most of them will have some sort of special abilities that come along.
This is so weird. The human species template I popped up, like the page doesn't look exactly like my character sheet page. It's not giving me I don't have a little show.
You don't have what?
There's a line on the template that has soak, wound, strain, defense, and that's like not on the character.
Oh,
You
I
have to-
found that one. That was in the combat tab.
You have to go to the tabs on the right side of your character sheet.
Okay, why would they put that on the front if it's not gonna be on the first one? Why do they make my life hard?
It's just a template.
Oh no.
All right. Since most of us are in that combat tab, we'll go over a few things as well. I said when you max out your wounds or strain, you become unconscious. That's not entirely true. It's when you exceed. So if you had a threshold of 12, at 13, you would become unconscious, which would go the same for strain. Strain in this system is something that will go up and down a ton. So it's like when you're making rolls, a lot of times if you end up with the strain icons on your character, I can a lot of times determine, okay, you take that much strain, or it can be spent in other ways. When you make rolls in combat, you can always use advantages to regain strain. Any character can also spend 2 points of strain to gain an additional maneuver. So the way the combat's really kind of set up, every character gets an action and a maneuver. Maneuvers are not only movement, but you can do other things like aim and just kind of basic things. We'll go over a list later. The basic gist, it's similar to D&D, where you have your action, your move, and your bonus action. There is no bonus action in this system. In D&D, you could always take your action to take another move action. It's similar in this system. You can give up your action to make another maneuver. However, you can never exceed 2 maneuvers in a turn.
All right, so it looks like I've got most of the species stuff set up.
Great. So for you, the next thing would be class. Are you still having trouble, Moon?
Yeah, I'm still not getting the library.
What in the world? Did you check under that book icon again to see if anything popped up?
Yeah, I don't have those book icons onto the modules.
But do you have 2 categories? Does it say the player library and the encounter library or GM library?
Yeah.
Do you see both of those? Try double clicking on like the Empire symbol for the player library.
Nothing.
Because that's what caused the book to open for me.
Ooh, we got something.
All right. That's what we like to hear. And then once that's loaded, you'll click on the library icon over on the right-hand side. And then from there, under player library, characters. And then you'll probably want to start with number 5, the species template. I see somebody picked up some brass knuckles.
So for a not force sensitive class, you get 4 free ranks from your career and 2 free ranks from your.
That sounds correct. Let me jump to the class section real quick.
How do you get to class?
Well, let's see. that might not be in the library.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was just being stupid. I didn't see it either.
I'm going to share a link with you all. That is a direct link to the Edge of the Empire book.
I was just putting it down for my own reference. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. So you'll probably have to choose classes out of that book. There is also the Force and Destiny book, which I can reference here in a second.
Okay. Also, not to be stupid again, but class is career in this.
Correct. It is career.
Okay.
And the second link is Force and Destiny. I thought you had Marauder on your list, Rainbow.
I did, but I talked with Ren a little bit after that.
Okay.
I sent the same thing to him, and I had liked the stats of it, but it was more fighty bitey.
Mm-hmm. So what does your character do?
I was kind of thinking, I like the charmer and I like the performer both because she's supposed to kind of be jack of all trades. She does a little bit of everything.
Okay.
But she's a good talker, a good how do I, babe?
What is it?
How would I put that? Safe for workly. She's like Cupid, but how do I say that?
She's a face character that does seduction and flirting and stuff.
Enchantress.
E.
She would do anything for a book or two. If that isn't against anybody's morals here.
Definitely not against mine.
I think for that, like, there's kind of two ways you can, like, the performer does the physical aspect of that well, whereas the charmer
wonk.
does the charmer does the talking aspect better. So if you want to lean more flirty, I think the charmer would maybe be better at that, but
That
performer
was
is
my thought. I definitely thought Charmer would be more party, like Layla, and less doing.
so the charmer is almost an pure talker. The performer gets a little bit of like melee combat stuff.
Well, do we have other melee? Like, would I, if I didn't do that, would we be short on Pow Pow? on fighters.
I know we have at least
90K.
one front line.
Yeah, whoever got the brass knuckles.
Yeah, that'd be if I'm going with Jedi, steel-handed adept, which I'm leaning towards now.
Okay. Well, either one that you choose, Rainbow, you can always go ranged.
Right.
Charmer can absolutely use a blaster, no problem.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, I think that's a good way. Like, Charmer is more stay back from the fight. Performer does get in the fray a little.
Where is Charmer, or is it called something different?
Charmer is from the Smuggler source book, Fly Casual.
Ah, okay.
Mhm.
So let me pull that up.
And he told me that was okay, so if it's wrong, it's his fault.
No,
It's not me.
there's nothing wrong with it.
I was assuming all source books were clear.
Yeah, there's no issue with them.
So you're not leaning tech then, Azur?
I feel like I'd have more fun role-playing this character. Even though they have less to do outside of combat, I think I have a better idea of who they are as a character.
Okay. So do we need a techie then? Because I did have a slightly different pilot that was like adding in some ship repair.
I mean, if we do need one, I can switch back. That's not a problem.
I like both versions of the character. When you said you were like an int-based character, Moon, were you doing tech or more knowledge?
More knowledge based, because with the Serene you get that binary processing, I think it's called. Yeah, binary processing, where you get careers, where all knowledge skills count as career skills.
So going techie would not infringe upon what you're doing.
No.
Well, I'll try and shift gears a little bit then, and I'll go my Shadra fan pilot instead. Which I hope you'll have fun, Atherin.
I
The
love
opening-
Shadra-fan.
The opening line to his storyline is, "This is the 7th time he's crashed a ship."
I'm sure your companions feel better already. Just let me know what help you guys need from me. I can easily pull up source books if you need them. The only other rule that we didn't cover is you cannot have a starting attribute higher than 3.
Like
Higher
that.
than 3?
For an attribute.
Like for your core stats?
Correct.
Oh, I thought you could raise them to a 4. You can't?
You cannot.
Oh, okay.
So what does that mean?
So, like, if you're human, you've got 2s across the board.
Mm-hmm.
You can spend experience to increase your stats, but no starting character can have a stat above a 3.
Okay.
Also, you can only spend experience to do that during character creation.
That is correct. And it's expensive. I believe it's 10 times the rank you're going to.
Yep.
Yes.
So I get all of these career skills, or am I picking?
You get the career skills. I think maybe you choose. Let me double check. I think you get everything from the first list, and then I'm trying to find the exact rule.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. In addition to the smuggler's 8 career skills, the charmer also receives charm, cool, leadership, and negotiation as bonus career skills. You may choose 2 of these skills and gain 1 free rank in each without spending starting experience.
Okay. And then what are the ranking? Like, what does that mean?
Give me 2 seconds.
You're fine.
Okay, so basically, to explain this, I have to explain how dice pools are generated. So they're generated by combining 2 stats together. So let's pick one of your skills here. Let's say charm, okay? And let's your charm is based off of your presence. So you've got a starting pool of 2 green dice. Now, depending on how many points that you put into charm, it will affect how many and which dice you use. So if you have 1 point into charm, you take the pools and you see which one is larger. In this case, presence is larger, so 2. You're going to have 2 dice. Since you have 1 in charm, one of those green dice are going to be upgraded to a yellow dice. If you had 2 points in charm, both of your presence dice would be upgraded to 2 yellows. Now let's say you have 3 points in charm and 2 in presence. Since 3 is larger, that's your starting pool. You'll start with 3 greens. And since you have 2 in presence, 2 of those would be upgraded to yellow. So green, yellow, yellow. This game will automatically track that, so you won't have to do that. But in a sense, bigger is better.
Okay.
Clear as mud.
Doing my best.
No, you're fine. It's one of those things. It's gonna look real odd, real alien, real foreign. But once we get into rolling the dice, you'll be like, oh, okay, it makes sense.
So what exactly do I put in next to those? Do I put in the 2?
Okay, so this is where spending experience comes in. Now, for being a charmer, you get to pick 2 of the skills and you get to train in them for free. So you get a free 1 point in something. Twice. So you kind of have to look at your list and go, well, what do I want to be good at? Everybody's okay at most things based off of your starting attributes, but these are the things that your character is specialized in, things that you do day to day, things that you've trained to do. So I would just kind of think of what your character is and what you want them to be good at, and then I can help you assign points to those. I can also explain what the skills mean if you need if anybody needs an explanation.
Okay, I think I'm all set up.
You're the Chagrian?
No, I am Tallow.
Ah, Mary Ellen.
Yeah, I think we might have 2 of those.
It's a big universe.
I just wanted to specify the name because I think somebody else said they were also a Mary Ellen.
Did you spend your XP?
Yes.
Okay.
And the only thing I didn't put in were the obligations, duty, morality.
Okay, and that's something that we'll discuss as a group as well. Did you get some sort of bonus for being a silhouette 0 in combat? Might have to look that rule up. I don't think I've ever played with anybody that wasn't at least humanoid size.
I'm inclined to say it's probably a setback die to target them, but I could be wrong.
That would be my guess. Disorient's a pretty cool condition.
Yeah, I'll be inflicting hopefully a lot of that with the brass knuckles.
Do you wear your diving suit everywhere? Or only when needed?
I would wear it without the helmet for the most part, just for the protection it provides. I'm assuming that it's like more, because the way they describe it, it's like slim and flexible rather than like what you imagine the typical diving suit in our universe to look like, which would be very difficult to move in.
Okay, so it offers 2 soak. Awesome. It's actually really good. It's cheaper than padded armor.
Yeah, I know it seems like it's like not done correctly for how it fits in with the pricing of everything else, but
I mean, it's pretty close. It's 100 credits off. I wonder if padded has more hard points or something.
padded doesn't have any hard points actually, so
Huh.
it's even better in that case. And the only real advantage I can find with padded armor over it is that padded armor is rarity 1, but the diving suit's only rarity 2.
Hmm. How do you guys feel about obligation? I don't think duty is super important in this. And then there's, of course, morality for the Jedi type characters. Does everybody even know what obligation is?
I'm mostly familiar with it.
So basically, what obligation is, your character has a life outside of this game up to this point. So obligation are a lot of times scrapping together money, you know, trying to live job to job. You might have accrued some debts. Say you took on some money from huts, or you took on a job and it went south and you owe them money. Then there are a few other things. I think like addictions. Let's see, we got, yep, addictions. Your character could be blackmailed. You might have a bounty on your head. You've sworn an oath to something. You've got some other sense of obligation. You're obsessed with something. Those sorts of things. Now, the way that obligation works is before we start sessions, we basically do a general roll. And if we roll and hit somebody's obligation, at some point it will show up in that session. Essentially, it's kind of taking you away from the story because this is right up in your face and you have to deal with it. How do the characters feel about this? What,
I have returned.
what do you think, Wilhelm?
Excellent.
Welcome back. We were talking about obligation. Are you familiar with the concept, Ren, or?
Yeah, I glanced over it. I wasn't sure. Why is there a numeric value to it? That's what I was lost.
Oh, okay. So if you understand what obligation is, it's basically something that's a part of your character. It's baggage that you're bringing into the group. The way the mechanic works is we basically tally up everyone's obligation, and at the start of every session, the DM will make a roll, and if it lands on someone's obligation, it will manifest itself during that session. Essentially, it kind of rears its ugly head, and it's something that the characters have to overcome or get around, so to speak. It will be a slight detraction to the story itself. So I'm kind of getting a feeler on if you guys want to do obligation, do low values of obligation, that sort of thing.
So, right, so where do the numbers come from? Like the severity of the bag?
Yes. So 5 is, okay, I've got something to deal with. 15 to 20 is something like Jabba's coming after my ass, like Boba Fett.
And that's determined by like pre-written things in the book, or do we have to make that, like, do we get to make that up?
Now, I personally like player characters to choose an obligation if they wish to do so, as opposed to randomly roll and go, oh, okay, I've got to deal with this. I feel like it's more narrative and more, I don't know, group-centric. Like, I don't know, if I was playing a character and I rolled randomly and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm an addict, I really didn't want to role play that up, you know? Whereas I would have chosen this. I feel like choosing is the better option.
And there's a lot of very specific obligations in the career subbooks,
Oh, okay.
so they can be a lot more targeted to your character than just the basic ones in the source.
The basic idea is, as player characters, how focused do you want to remain on the plot versus dealing with things that your characters may have randomly brought into the group. I'm fine either way, and we can always do high levels, low levels of obligation. We'll hash it out if we are using obligation.
I guess
having it makes it a bit more fun.
It certainly can.
part of my question would be how far out of bounds do you think this adventure is going to take us?
I guess I don't understand the question. Can you rephrase it?
Like, okay, if an obligation response might be like Boba Fett coming after you, are we going to be like super out in the wilderness to where it feels awkward if our obligation gets triggered, or does it going to make sense that it's coming after us out?
It would be my job to incorporate it in the story. So characters who pick obligations, we'll I don't know, DM or sit down together and work it out. So if it comes up, neither of us will be blindsided per se. It's designed to come up, be an issue in that game's session, and then you move on. It's not like it comes up, we need to spend 3-4 sessions dealing with this, then back to the main story.
And it can
Okay.
be as minor as like, oh, you have a lot of debt, and it's like suddenly you just like that particular morning you wake up and it's really something you're mentally struggling with, and so you have reduced strain. It doesn't always have to be like a bounty hunter coming at you.
Right. Mechanically, here's how it works. We roll off the chart. If we hit somebody's on their chart, their obligation comes up. They will suffer a -2 strain to their threshold. Everybody else will suffer a -1. However, if we roll double digits, I believe they lose 4 strain and everybody else loses 2. And it is only for that session. The upside, aside from the role-playing challenges, is that you guys gain some mechanical benefit, either experience or money.
So when would we, like, how would we decide what they are for each of us if we do them?
The basic list, Rhand had linked like a character start guide. It is on page 2. That's the basic list. And there are more in various source books. It's not something that you have to pick, oh, I'm picking this obligation tonight. We could work it out between now and session 1.
So to put it in like words between me and you, on like it's the knife theory, but codified like in the game system, and so you'd like tell him your knives, and he would like talk with you about the numerical things you would input about.
Okay.
Is that a term other people are familiar with, or is that just to us?
When you said knives, I immediately thought of Ash the Stampede.
So essentially we just give him shit to hurt us with.
Well, if anybody wants to turn their arm into a giant cannon, this is the system to have that happen in.
Absolutely.
Oh, I was wrong, hun. It costs only 5 experience to train a career skill to rank 1, so you can actually get the 1 rank in leadership 2, or another career skill if.
Oh.
Or you have an extra 5 experience floating now, so you can
Well,
spend that.
okay. I put it in leadership, so we're good.
Cool beans.
Google Poo has been unable to find just like a complete list of.
All right. Anybody got any questions over anything?
Nothing super springs to mind. If we do include obligation, are we doing the standard rules where the group starts with its own obligation and then we can individually pick up obligation as well, or would it just be the individual?
Well, it really depends on what we want to do as a group. Like if we're running a higher obligation campaign, then we will probably, unless people start taking like 10s and 20s, we'll probably leave it in if it's just kind of your average kind of game. If we're going low obligation, we'll probably just do character obligation as opposed to group obligation.
And my personal feeling is that given the setup that we have for this campaign, that a group obligation would make a little less sense at first, since we're all basically just meeting for the first time.
But again, I'm comfortable with whatever we want to do as a group.
So if we individually take obligations, the starting value for it would be 10 since we have 4 to 5 people.
That's for the group obligation.
Oh.
Individually, there are 5s and 10s.
So if I put in 5, that means I get 5 XP to spend.
Or 1,000 credits.
Ooh. Where would I put in credits at?
Let me see.
Out of curiosity.
Maybe in the other tab. It's about the best place that I can think.
What was the question?
Where to put in credits.
It's in inventory. It's in the bottom left corner.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Yeah, it didn't jump out at me at first either.
It's a good spot for it, though.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also having a hard time putting in an image.
That may be only something that I can do.
Okay. It doesn't let me, like, put an avatar in or anything.
I'm gonna try something.
Okay. More long-termy question. Do we have
Mhm.
people that are going to be skilled in agility that might be interested in operating ship guns, or should I also train gunnery as a pilot?
Well, I'll have a decent agility. I can potentially pick up. It wouldn't be a career skill. I can pick up gunnery.
But people might want to do the pew-pews as enough anyway.
I know combat is less of a major in this system, but what do we have in terms of party? I know I'm going to be a melee.
I'm assuming the other Jedi is a melee.
I would assume as well, yeah. It's
More or less, yeah.
Okay. So there's 2 melee and then probably 2 ranged.
Yep. Me and
decent
her.
balance.
Are you guys both light blasters?
I am.
Yes.
Okay. That makes it simple. No rapid fire weapons. Or auto fire.
You can make some crazy powerful weapons, especially with auto fire.
All right. Well, people are working on some things. One thing that I do want to show you, and you'll probably want to have it open 24/7. In the upper right-hand corner, there's an icon that looks like 2 dice. If you click that open, it will open the dice pool tracker. And this is a very communal dice game. You can see what other people are putting into their dice pools.
Yeah, I saw that earlier when I was sneaking around.
So I would recommend having that open, especially because it is a different system, and we'll get into this in kind of the second half. But it is a different system than D&D. It's not just okay, I choose a skill, I roll a die. It's very interactive between the storyteller and the player. So as you're doing things, you might not know the difficulty. I will tell you, okay, that's a difficulty of 2, or that's a difficulty of 2, but upgrade 1 to a challenge die, that sort of thing. And you should all be able to see my dice as well.
So how do we input dice
into well, there's a couple different ways. If you open up your character sheet and let's see, we'll go to your skills and let's find something that you're kind of trained in. This will be a good one. So you should see the die icon next to your skills. Double click on like cool. Now, see what it did there? It did your calculation for you. Since you have a 2 in presence, it would have put in 2 green die. And since you have 1 trained in cool, it automatically upgraded that die. Now, the DM might be like, okay, that's a difficulty of 2 purple dice. So you should be able to click on the purple plus. And in this case, it's 3 times. Or you could manually drop them in. And then the DM might be like, oh, you got this going for you, so add a boost die. But this and this are going against you, so you're going to need to add 2 setback die as well.
And I went to add 2 purples, but it just upgraded the purple to a challenge die.
And then click it one more time. It will always upgrade first, then add.
Okay, and then I do downgrade challenge to get it back to 2 purple.
In this case, if you did that, it will probably subtract 1. You might have to manually add the difficulty die 2 times. Or, since it is Fantasy Grounds, if you right-click on any of the die, it will give you a numerical value. You could select that and drop it in the bucket. Or you could pick up the die and right-click however many times that you need. It'll take a little bit to get used to, but it's not too bad. There, 1 success, 1 strain. If you inadvertently added a die into your pool and you want to remove it, you can just simply double click on it. And I am going to step away for about 5 minutes or so. If you guys need me, ping me on the thing. But we're about halfway through-ish, so I think now's kind of an appropriate point for a break if you want one. When I come back, we'll start going over some of the mechanics, rules, and we'll also get into the social contract.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so I've got my stats and ranks and experience spent and all of that. So what should my next step?
Atherin stepped away for just a second, so
Okay, I'm back.
he heard your call for help.
What's that?
I had just caught up and finished spending my experience and stuff and wasn't sure what to do next.
I believe you're pretty much done at this point.
Are you able to hijack our sheets in this
Yeah,
system?
I can see your sheet.
Does it look right if I written in cursive?
Cursive? I don't see any cursive. Experience spent. You've got talents. Looks like your skills are in order.
Is it okay if everything in my character sheet is written in wingdings?
Ooh, that might be pushing it. Can you do Orabesh?
I can try.
I don't even know what that is.
It's the when you see the funny little characters in Star Wars, that's the common.
Oh. I was like, is that a new form of wingding?
Kind of.
I mean, technically, probably.
That's what Galactic Basic actually looks like.
Inventory. Looks like you need to do their thick lad and come up with a real name.
Yeah, I'm not keeping that. I just will have to marinate a bit on a name.
That's totally fine.
What else should we have in our inventory?
Oh, well, if you go to the library, player library, and equipment, there are a bunch of things. So you will probably want to buy a ranged energy weapon. Armor is always a good thing. But I may need to explain how, we'll use D&D terms, how AC kind of works in this system.
If we decide to take obligation, can we add if we go with the credits option, can we spend those as well, or is that just starting money?
Nope, you can absolutely spend it.
I think I'll do that.
I also shared my Wampa Tiki.
What was our starting money?
I believe that's...
Starting is 500 by default.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, let me explain a little bit what the stats on armor do. It may have a defense value, and it may have a soak value. Defense will add a setback die on attacks against you, so it makes you more difficult to hit. Soak, think of it as DR. If you take 5 points of damage, you're going to soak 2 of those. So you're going to reduce it to 3. So in terms of value, I would say soak is probably better than defense, but defense is still good.
You picked the light laser, right?
Huh?
You are ranged light, so
Range light. Okay.
any type of pistol-y weapon would be fitting for you.
Which under the energy ranged, let's see, ranged energy weapon table, it would be the first 2 categories. 3 categories. And then there's a few mixed in, which are weird, but
That website that I linked to earlier has the full selection of weapons. You go into characters, not characters, equipment, and then weapons. You can, pretty sure you can specifically sort down to light blasters. And that covers all the splat.
So, how does the rarity thing work with the what equipment rarity?
the higher the rarity, the more difficult it is to obtain.
How does that interact with our starting equipment purchases?
Maybe I have that backwards.
And I think you have it right. The higher the number, the harder it is.
Yeah, because it looks like the higher rarities have higher prices and also higher damage, so that would
Yeah.
make more sense.
So I would look through, maybe make a couple selections, and then we'll go from there. Like your 7s and 8s are pretty much going to be out. Let me see if
There
I
are
can
also
find.
certain items that have a restricted note on them, and those specific just can't be used at all for starting purposes, even if they're low rarity. I know a lot of the criminal stuff is under restricted, like poisons and things like that.
Okay, I added something to my inventory. How do I?
How do you delete it?
Yes, sir.
You should be able to right-click on the item and then choose the skull and crossbones.
Thank you.
You are welcome. So while you guys are shopping, I'll start going over some of the important things. Probably the most important thing in this system is the way that the force dies work. So at the beginning of every session, each player is going to roll 1 force die, and it's either going to roll a white pip or a black pip. So light side, dark side. And that's going to form our pool for that session's game. Essentially, it's kind of a back and forth between the GM spending dark side points and the players spending light side points. Now, spending a point can do all sorts of fun things. Say you're in combat and you want to give yourself some sort of edge, you can spend a light side point. It'll upgrade one of your die, which upgrading is always better. Going from green to yellow will give you a chance at a triumph. So think of that like nat 20s. But you can spend them in other ways as well. Say, this is probably the best example. Say you were on a planet and sensors indicated that it was breathable. However, something has happened and the atmosphere is toxic. One of the characters could go, "Oh, it's no problem. I remembered that we picked up that crate of rebreathers, in the thing. You spend a light side point, boom, you instantly have that item. Now, I, as the DM, I can spend them to upgrade my character's dice and all sorts of just fun things like that. Now, the way the mechanic works is these points are meant to be spent often. Whenever you spend a light side point, it changes over to a dark side point. Whenever I spend one, it changes over to a light side point. Starting in session 2 is when we'll really hit it. Session 1 is going to be a little bit of a learning curve, I realize. But if you guys are not spending light side points, per the rules, the DM is encouraged to make your guys' life a living hell. So, spend them points. Make sense?
Yes,
You
sir.
just got to get creative.
Yep. Absolutely. This system is way more narrative than just about any other system that I can think of off the top of my head. So, spending points and being creative, just using advantages, that sort of thing is definitely going to pay off for your characters.
Yeah, I think a really good example that I had seen somebody post online was in a fight in a warehouse. They had rolled a light side die to have the enemy's blaster fire hit a crane that, when the blaster had missed, they had it hit a crane that then short-circuited and dropped a big crate in between them and the enemy, so they had cover.
Perfect. Let's go over range bands, because this is very different from like traditional D&D type games. In those sorts of games, you have movement. I can move 30 feet. I can do that. In this game, we won't be dealing with, it's like 30 meters away and that sort of thing. We'll be talking about ranged bands. So we've got engaged, short, medium, long, extreme. So engaged means, you're right up next to another character. If two characters are standing next to each other, they're considered engaged. If you're running up to hit somebody with your fist or your melee weapon, you would need to get into engaged ranged. Short range is not engaged, but you're a small distance away. It could be 1 meter, 5 meters. We're not really going to get into the minutiae of that. So, like, say you guys are in Cantina. You guys are at, say, a couple characters are at the bar. Somebody else walks in. You're probably at short range. If you were all the way across the room, you're at medium range. Long range is, say you were standing outside a cantina and there was somebody down towards the end of the street. That is long range. Extreme is pretty much, think of like sniper-esque distance. It's way down there. Now, the big change here is you're going to use your maneuvers to move. So you have to go through each of the bands. So if you're moving from short to engaged, that's one maneuver. If you're moving from short to medium, that is also one maneuver. However, if you're moving from medium to long range, that is two maneuvers. And then medium to extreme is also two maneuvers. So if you were trying to move from, short range to extreme, you've got 1 to medium, and then 2 to long, and then 2 to extreme. That's 5 moves. As your character can only take 2 maneuvers in a turn, you can see how distance will kind of play out. There is also the Disengage Maneuver, which will essentially take you from engaged into short range. For you melee characters, if you're engaged with somebody who has a ranged weapon, you get a boost die against them. They get a setback die for any attacks that they're trying to make, and their difficulty also increases as well. The difficulty increases based off the weapon type. So if they were using a light weapon, their difficulty increases by 1. If they're using a heavy weapon, it increases by 2. Make sense?
Sort of.
I'll
We'll get
see.
the hang of it.
I'll see if I can't get a chart or something. I think this week I will work on getting some charts together. Ranged, I think, will be one. I might do the force points. That might be helpful. Trying to think of what else. What you can spend advantages and strain on. That'll probably be another one. And then maybe we can talk a little bit about critical hits as well. Criticals are basically how your character is going to end up dead. So the critical, this is the only time that you'll use a percentile in this system. So whenever you get hit by a critical, we basically roll off a chart, and then you may have some ongoing things. Now, a character can only have 4 criticals against them. On the 4th critical, you are down for the count, and you cannot do anything until that's been healed. What criticals do, every time that you score a critical on somebody, we basically do a D100 roll. On the next critical, you're rolling at 10 plus D100. Next critical is 20 plus a D100. Death only really happens once you get close to 150.
Goodness.
I say this game is very lethal. It's not super easy to just die, but it is very easy to go unconscious in this game.
I haven't played much in this system, but one of the things I very quickly learned is that when combat starts, if you're not a melee fighter, you should immediately get to cover.
That is very wise. And the melees need to run up and engage as quickly as they possibly can.
Exactly.
Hey, Azer.
Mm-hmm.
On the website you shared, do you know what? I was looking under some items, and a couple of them have an R in front of the prize.
That means they're restricted, so you can't use those during character creation.
Okay.
Yeah, those are basically items that are illegal in the universe.
Oh, okay. That's so interesting because I was looking at things that weren't very expensive to get, but a lot of them were still restricted.
Some of them, think of like our modern military. They're pretty prevalent, but the common citizen does not have access to them. That is another way to look at it.
Right, right.
But some things are straight up illegal.
Yeah, I think you would imagine that in a rebellion era setting, that stormtrooper blasters would be very cheap to manufacture. But if you were a civilian walking around with one, you would definitely raise some eyebrows.
Yeah, and get lots of cracks to the head.
Yes.
Yeah, I had been looking at gear, I think, and it was saying that death sticks were like 5 credits, and I'm like, that doesn't sound like something I should be able to get.
Yeah, I think that's a drug.
It's
Yeah.
definitely a drug.
It is.
It's totally a drug.
I think it's real spice. I want to go home and rethink my life.
So I think I'm going to use my starting obligation money to buy better equipment.
There is nothing wrong with that.
And then are we rolling a D100 to after that for credits? I thought I saw that on one of the websites I was peeking at.
Let's see if I can find a ruling on that.
I think that's credits that you start with, but you can't spend during character creation, if I remember.
Right, yeah.
Which is fine.
So that if you spend all of your money during character creation, you aren't actually broke when you start the game.
My problem is I'm so stingy that I still have like 500 credits and I haven't hardly bought any. I did this exact thing with Layla, even though she's supposed to be fucking rich.
There's a lot of miscellaneous items that you can pick up too.
Ooh. This website is really helpful, Azure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, let's change up some music here.
DJ Wilhelm is in the house.
It's a Star Wars staple. Do you have your weapon added to your character, Azure?
I'm in the process of creating it.
Oh, okay. All right, I'm going to use Rhand's character as an example here. Under his weapon properties, he's got critical listed with 5 advantages. So, to activate that, he's going to need to roll 5 advantages.
Not gonna happen very likely.
It could. But there's also another way to activate criticals. If you roll a triumph, you could spend that triumph to activate your critical. Now, one thing to remember with criticals, the enemy actually has to suffer at least 1 point of wound damage. So if they end up soaking up all the normal damage, you cannot activate a critical. But as most weapons are 5 or so damage at the low end, it's not too incredibly difficult to actually damage someone. Stormtroopers might have a soak of 5. Oh, I forgot one thing that's pretty important to the system. Initiatives. It is very different from like D&D. So there's 2 initiative rolls. You've got cool and you've got vigilance. Cool is something that you would roll when you're going into a fight and it's expected. Vigilance is if you were caught unaware. Now, this system is very different. We're not rolling for numerical values and, the person who rolled the best goes first and then sequentially. It works off of party slots. So essentially, you guys as a group are trying to outroll your adversaries. And then we start assigning slots. So we've got 4 player characters here, and let's say I've got 2 characters on my side. We all end up rolling. Say you guys got 2 really high scores, and then 2 of you got really low scores, and my bad guys got somewhere in the middle of the road. So essentially that could work out as player slots 1 and 2, bad guys 3, 4, and then the rest of the players at 5 and 6. You guys get to decide as a group who goes. So if you guys have the initiative slot 1, any of you 4 can choose to go. Same with my bad guys. When they roll, they're going to choose who gets to act when. it is very advantageous to make sure that you do it in kind of a tactical manner. You know, if somebody's like way far away and can't really do anything in the battle, they may end up wanting to go in the last party slot. Whereas if you've got, say you've got one of your characters that's right next to two big beefy bruiser type characters, they may want to go first so they can get the hell out of there. But again, it's decided as a group.
That's more like your 2E group you talk about, right?
Kind of. They roll based with my second edition group. I basically broke things down into 4 different types of actions. You've got melee, you've got ranged, you've got spell, and then you've got other. And each of those will have, in second edition, weapons have specific speeds. So they know what weapon that they're using. They're going to roll their die modified by any initiative modifiers plus their weapon speed. And then they will go in that order. Magic, since it's a little more varied, I gave it a static value of 3. So they will always add 3 to their roll, regardless of the spell. The benefit that they have is they don't, if they roll really well, they don't have to re-roll the next round if they're going to cast a spell. Ranged is very slow in the system. And then other action is just a default value of 5. And that is any action that is not a melee attack, a ranged attack, or a spell attack. It is a massive variant that I created for my second edition group. But I have 8 players. And we also, as a group, we don't like the static kind of, you roll initiative and that's what it is for that combat. We feel it just gets kind of stale. So I came up with a system that's very quick and easy.
That's too many.
It's fine.
Too many people.
Yeah, I make sure the combat flows in those. Everybody has a minute to set their initiatives. Plus, I have a physical tracker with tokens that they use that they place into it. They have a minute to do that, and then we start going through the turns. And if they're unsure of what they need to do, they automatically go last in the round. But we won't be doing something like that here. We've got 4-player characters. Any questions? Specific questions? General questions?
How do we know what a character is carrying, or like what counts towards their income?
Typically, I don't necessarily think encumbrance is all that important. I never have. I know it's part of rules in games, but I mean, as long as you... Here's my too far. Is everybody familiar with Casey Jones from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Vaguely. It's been a while.
All right, so he's got a duffel bag that is just full of freaking weapons that he carries around. Your character does not have that. I mean, maybe if you're like a demolitions expert and you've got some certain things in there that you have to lug around, but your average character, you don't have two vibro swords, 16 daggers, 1,400 grenades, a bazooka on your back, a flechette launcher, and a jetpack, and rocket skates. I mean, let's keep it within reason.
So you're not Reaper from Overwatch, who throws away his shotgun instead of reloading them.
Oh wow. definitely not. Oh, speaking of which, do you guys know what the crit penalty is on ranged weapons?
What's that?
If you roll a despair, I can say, oh, your gun just ran out of ammo for the encounter.
At
Which is
that-
why it's usually very handy to have an extra ammo pack on spare.
That would be great. But unfortunately, your gun also jammed.
Then you would just pistol whip people.
Basically.
Just
Just T-pose menacingly.
It also works for against bad guys too. T-pose.
T-pose to assert dominance. Where's that talent?
I rolled 3 successes on my dab.
you're not allowed to bring that in here, babe.
But running out of ammo in a conflict can add a lot of tension and drama. Since we're talking about crits and failures, anybody have a guess at what you can do if you roll 2 triumphs?
Double crit?
Basically.
How would you like to do this?
No, you could select an opponent's armor, weapons, item, and say, I destroy it.
Maloot!
Just absolutely shit on it.
I can't wait till I roll double triumphs.
Oh no.
So, we got about 40 minutes left here, so I think maybe now's a good time to maybe go over our social contract of sorts. So, it's really broken down into expectations for me and expectations for the players. So, I will start with the player side first. So, we've set our start time at 9:15. I think it's probably a good idea to start logging in around 9 o'clock. I will always have Fantasy Grounds open. I will try to have it open at least like an hour before. Usually around 8 o'clock is when I kind of sit down, make sure everything's on, prep for the stream, that sort of thing. So you would be able to connect at about any point there. Like to get started as close to 9:15 as possible. Expectation for players. I know that this is going to be a new system, so I'm not expecting Rome to be built overnight. So it's going to be a learning process for everybody, and we'll get through it. If you have questions, make sure that you ask them. That way we can kind of just flow through things. If you have questions outside of the game, I am pretty much available whenever I am awake. So feel free, and I encourage you to DM me as much as needed or as much as you want. I love talking, especially about the game or anything really. If you have ideas for your character, I'd really like to maybe explore this. Reach out to me. I will gladly meet the players halfway. That's one thing that I really love about role-playing is it's not just me talking to you guys or me telling you a story. I'll take care of the plot. You guys develop the story, and together I think we can make something pretty cool. If you've selected something for your character, please do your best to kind of understand it a little bit. If you have questions on it, feel free to reach out to me. We can work through it. I know on Fantasy Grounds, not everything is kind of preloaded to read. So if you've got one that says like, oh, please refer to blah, 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 it might be a good idea to maybe, have a notepad open or a physical notepad, kind of write down kind of what these abilities do. That way, we're not constantly searching through books. That's really about all the player expectations that I have. Now, expectations for me as a DM, the floor is open to you guys. All right, no expectations for me. Sweet.
I don't really have any. I feel like you kind of have your own standards as a DM, and like you know what you hold yourself to, and I trust you enough to not really set rulings for that, if that makes sense.
Fair enough. Pinky's out.
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing is for me is just that you don't, as a DM, not to get too bogged down in the DM player relationship, and just sometimes let the game flow in the way that benefits the players and makes everyone happy, even if it's not exactly how the game is supposed to be run in the book all the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, lean a little more and don't totally discredit Rule of Cool. Does that sum it up?
Yeah, basically. It's a game to have fun. It's a collaborative storytelling thing, and if the rules need to take a back seat, sometimes I'm fine with that, and I'd like everyone else to kind of be on that same page.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't think this system has as many hard and fast rules. That said, but the spirit's.
No, I totally understand. There are very few hard rules in this. It's mostly open to the interpretation of the dice. So that being said, I'm going to piggyback on this. It is a little new, but sometimes advantages can be kind of interpreted by the player a little bit too. So let's say I don't know. We'll just pick a random scenario. You're trying to sneak away into somewhere. There's security cams, there's guards, that sort of thing. You succeed on your roll, but you've got a couple successes left over, and say, I don't really feel like I need to recover any strain or anything like that. Hey, DM, would it be possible if I encourage that? Essentially, could I spend my advantages on this? Could the guards be looking away? Could some of the security cams be pointed in, just an obscure kind of angle? Those sorts of things.
Letting us be as creative and system giving us what we put into it.
Absolutely. The players are always far more creative together than I ever will be as a single person.
Sounds good to me.
I'm just not really picky. I've not played this long enough to really have any qualms with anybody or have any sticking point.
Totally understandable.
I would add maybe don't kill us all immediately, but I figured probably that.
Typically, no. It's no secret that I'm sometimes not very heavy-handed. Now, in this system, it's very difficult to... How do I say this? It's easy for me to protect the plot and protect the narrative, but it's not so easy keeping your characters up. You might not die, but you guys might fall over in combat and have to deal with that. That's just the nature of this system. So I would suggest not approaching this like D&D. Have an open mind. Maybe, try to channel your inner Star Wars spirit. Just a direct, like, oh, we're going to invade this kobold nest. In D&D, that's pretty straightforward. We're going to hack and slash our way through to victory. In Star Wars, that might not always be the case. I would even lean on the side that's probably not going to be the case most of the time. So being a little smart about things, I would think that the players are probably going to talk through some scenarios more. But in the same vein, there's going to be things that are just sprung on you, kind of in the spirit of the moment as well. So reacting is a big part. I will do my best not to murder you all.
I do remember very vividly that a lot of it comes down to the players as well, as in the one campaign that I have played in the system. One of my allies had started with a grenade and immediately decided to use it in an airlock between two ships.
Oh, wow.
Oh no.
And we all almost died.
Only almost.
It was only because I had started with a magnetic tether in my armor.
Oh,
I was
nice.
able to grapple back onto the ship. Otherwise, we all would have been sucked into the vacuum of space and died in like session 2.
That being said, if you guys obviously make a stupid decision, there's not a lot that I can do about that. I'm not saying that you guys will. I'm just saying, like, I've had player characters who, case in point, they decided to run a blockade in not even a really fast or armored ship. They just decided to, Coruscant was under siege, and they decided that they were going to pilot through it. And I'm like, okay, different system, but okay, what's your piloting ranks and all this? Oh, that's not very good. Are you sure you still want to do this? Oh, yeah, absolutely. All right, make me some rolls. Failed, died, exploded. He was salty. I'm like, what did you expect was going to happen?
Considering that this character's story is that he used to be, or he was part of the people that broke the Mandalorian blockade, that does not do me a good feel.
Yeah, but your character's designed around piloting.
But I heard explode and die.
Well, yeah. I mean, he was trying to pilot a ship, and he was none too good at it. That same character, he likes to do things outside the bounds of his character. So let's say he's playing a brick, somebody's big meathead, right? Dex, either 0 or negatives. Yeah, I'd like to do some sort of flip and tumble. Well, what's your acrobatic skill? Oh, I don't have one. Well, what's your base dexterity? -1. Okay. Why don't you? I don't know. Try like plowing through somebody or do something else. No, I want to do this. Okay. That being said, I'm not suggesting that if your character's not built to do something that you can't do it. I'm just saying go into it with some realistic expectations. And that also helps protect other characters. That way they can do the things that they were built to do, to kind of, that's their moment to shine. Like a character doesn't need to shine in every moment of every scene. That's just not good teamwork.
Now, to start with, we're doing like a several session, like contained adventure to test this out, you had said before.
Yes. So when we get started, we're going to jump straight into the thick of things. and it's designed to kind of teach you guys the ropes with both skills and combat. Role-playing, I don't think that you guys will have any issues whatsoever. I will be doing this non sequitur. I like doing this with Star Wars. So we're going to jump into the thick of things. Once that encounter's over, we're actually going to backtrack in time and then do a kind of a twofold plot reveal, and then jump forward in time and do a plot development, and then we'll go from there. It'll make sense. It'll be fun. I've done this several times in Star Wars. I've had pretty good success with it.
Nice.
But as far as like doing checks, if anybody has any questions on like how would I do this, we can certainly kind of go over the basics.
Oh, I was going to say, since we touched on the topic, it might be good to give a cursory going over the rules of Starship combat, since I know that differs from regular combat in terms of system strain and the damage threshold there.
Okay. So
obviously you don't just get knocked out, you explode and die.
Correct. So essentially the values are much higher. Your ship will have armor to kind of soak some of the damage. It may have shields as well that will kind of soak and defend against some of the damage. Ships also have arcs that can kind of take more damage than others. I'll have to pull up some specific Starship rules because it is a little bit different from the rest, but we can certainly go over that. I will find some resources, or I can probably find a good guide on YouTube that's just kind of like a cursory glance.
Just to be clear, me playing a pilot isn't a bad thing with what you've got planned out?
No, not at all. You guys will be kind of tropsing through the galaxy. It will definitely be used.
All right, cool.
Now, as far as your ship, like doing a full naval combat, like might not be. How do I say this? There'll be ship combat, but there won't be like a full-on naval type excursion, like two armies going to war.
But I gotta rescue the Chancellor from Count Dooku.
Right? He died like such a bitch, too.
I can just hear my cat consuming my wife in the back room.
He wanted snuggles and then he started biting me.
Any questions on any of the skills or how your weapons work, how soak and defense work?
I'm assuming if we get an attachment to an item that we can't put modifications on, since we need to make rolls for that normally.
If you're really hard set on maybe like one thing at the start, we can certainly go over it. I do not have the rules in front of me as far as like hard points and attachments.
Just because I know that, I mean, a lot of us are brand new to this system, would it be too much to ask for like a quick one sentence for the different skills and what they...
Yeah, no problem. So let me pull up a character sheet here. All right, so we'll start at the top. So astrogation, this is specifically plotting points between systems, going places. It's less about knowledge of the worlds. This is really just plotting courses, that sort of thing. Athletics. So that's pretty self-explanatory, same as D&D. Charm. Okay, so you're using more of your presence as opposed to coercion, which is will. Charm is very friendly, so a female, or I guess a male, could kind of use their sexual prowess a little bit and convincing someone to do something. Coercion is more it's a little more cerebral. Like, you should probably do this because this will happen, sort of thing. Computers, pretty self-explanatory, hacking into systems, accessing database, blah, blah, blah. Cool. Cool is your initiative, based off of you're going into the situation and you're at least prepared for it. You are not caught unaware. Coordination, you could think of that as kind of acrobatics, agility based sort of things, maybe tightrope walking, etc. Deception, you're using your cunning and your thoughts to lead someone astray or telling a lie. Discipline, so this is kind of how well you can maintain focus. The closest thing that I can think is like a wisdom type save. It's not necessarily a save, but it kind of in that same bounds. Like, cool is you're going into a situation and you're well. Discipline is, okay, I've either trained or I just have the aptitude to kind of keep myself normal. It's not discipline's a hard one to describe. Leadership, that's like influencing comrades, getting people that are on your side, issuing orders, that sort of thing. Leadership can also come into play in Starship combat, since it kind of breaks down into different roles, because not everybody can pilot, not everybody can be at the gunnery seat, not everybody can do the sorts of things. So leadership, a good leader can basically inspire others. Mechanics, so this one I think is the same as computers, but this is more physical components, cogs, gears, repairing, those sorts of things. Medicine, healing people. Negotiation, so this is a very diplomatic approach. I don't think it's either positive or negative. You're just using politics and that sort of thing to reach an understanding or an agreement. Perception, everybody should probably know that. It's just spotting things, seeing things. You've got your two different forms of pilot. So planetary and space, they're two totally different things. Planetary would be like repulsor lifts. There might be some that actually have wheels, ATVs, that sort of thing. Space would be your a starship up to, like a capital class ship. Resilience, think of this as kind of like endurance. Is based off of your brawn skill, your strength, and brawn is kind of like a combination between strength and con together. So resilience, poisons, harsh environments, etc. Skullduggery is basically every rogue type skill thrown together. It is a cunning based. You're kind of using your knowledge and your wiles to do different things, trying to break into a door that you wouldn't use. That's a tough one. So, like, you were trying to break into a door. Is it a security door? Is there like a terminal? That you might want to use computer. Are you physically trying to break open the door and that sort of thing, or kind of bend the mechanics to it? That would be a mechanics check. Skullduggery is more like I'm trying to break into somewhere. Stealth, pretty self-explanatory. Your ability to hide, sneak. Streetwise it's almost like a knowledge skill, but it's kind of how well that you can deal with people, navigating your way around, just kind of like an average citizen, how well that you understand concepts like, oh, well, there's 2 blocks here, and I noticed this was there, so it was probably this over here. Survival, again, cunning, it's pretty similar to the D&D skill. Your ability to adapt and overcome, finding food, foraging, that sort of thing. Vigilance is opposed to cool, where cool is you're going into the situation aware. Vigilance is how well you react to something under stressors, like you're caught unaware. So we'll jump into the knowledge skill. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory. They broke it down into core worlds and the outer rim. We can go over the core worlds, but it's basically close to the center of the galaxy, Coruscant, Corellia, that sort of thing. Outer rim, you're talking like Tatooine, some remote places, Naboo. Let's see, education. Does this say educations?
Yes, it does.
I don't know if that's correct. So I think that's more like your book smarts, your book knowledge on, I guess, specific topics, collegiate level, academia. Lore is kind of those obscure things. So think more like bardic type things. It could be Jedi lore, Sith lore, things that are not typically like everyday type things, but aren't underworld. So I'm going to jump down to underworld. That would be the seedy side of things, criminal organizations, thieves guilds, those sorts of things. Warfare. How well do you understand the tactics of war? Do you understand what kind of machinations, weapons, that sort of thing are being used? Xenology is how well you understand other races, alien races, etc., etc. Now, in the combat skills, brawl is punching, kicking, basically any sort of melee attack without a melee weapon, essentially. Claws, teeth. Gunnery, this is mostly encompassing mounted weapons, blaster cannons on ships, firing controls as far as like capital class ships. It could also be E-webs. They're kind of mounted. Takes 3 people to efficiently operate one. Lightsaber, pretty self-explanatory. Melee, this would be like vibro swords, axes, knives, that sort of thing. Then we've got ranged heavy, ranged light. Ranged light is basically a one-handed weapon. Ranged heavy is a two-handed weapon. Any questions? Concerns? Amusing anecdotes?
I think it was well said.
I think they did a pretty good job of splitting things off in this system.
I agree.
There are a lot of skills, but I can see why they have most of them. But just like anything, some of them will be used more than others. All right, and one thing, I will leave you guys with a little bit of homework. Technically, there's 3 ships that the players can choose from starting. I will open that up if they're roughly equivalent in value.
So, what is that? What exactly are you referring to? The pool we can choose?
Okay, so by Edge of the Empire rules, the players will essentially start with a ship. Now, there's like 3 that you can kind of choose from, each of them have a monetary value. I am opening that up where you guys can choose a different freighter if you so wish, as long as it's roughly comparable to one of the starting ships. So like a YT 1300, I think a YT 2000. I'd have to look what they are in the book. Might take me a while since I don't have a physical copy in front of me.
Yeah, I just know that Azur had previously, like, he made this really big spreadsheet about the different ships.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they all fall in price range because I think even the main book, the source book, I'm thinking of, says that you can't have anything starting over 120,000 credits as a hard cap if you have the option to pick another ship.
How many credits?
120,000 is the cap on
Okay.
starting ships. So nothing that I put on that list that I is over.
There you go. And you guys can work collectively on that and deciding what you want.
I'll give it my rubesti, but no promises. Considering I'm not probably going to be flying the ship, that should probably be a lot of Ren.
I mean, we're all going to be basically living it for most of the campaigns. We all have a set.
Throws pressure onto Red. You do it. Do it.
I'm not picking, but I did,
Do it.
like, previously, I just posted my thing. I had looked at a couple of them that I liked from Azur's list before. All I ask is that we don't start with the Millennium Falcon.
No. I mean, technically, it hasn't been invented yet.
Yeah,
It's
that was one of my main questions. Is all the ships in the books are all from
And
obviously
we'll
Rebellion era.
we'll do some tweaking. Just because it's not in the era doesn't mean that we can't change a few things and kind of errata it. I think that's just a minor detail.
Yeah, I mean, you look at KOTOR games and the ships that you had there were all basically what you'd still expect from a Rebellion era.
Yeah, so instead of like the YT 1300, you could have something similar to the Evan Hawk.
Oh yeah, it was the same ship in games, wasn't it?
Yeah, or SWOTOR themselves, there were one ship per class.
I hope everyone has enjoyed making their characters so far.
I just noticed there's actually an item called training weights that give you a set base on athletics and acrobatics checks, I think.
That's
But
funny.
at the end of a session, you get 1 extra experience point.
God, that's like the muscle band from Pokemon or whatever it was.
I know creating a character in this, not only is it different, but it's a little involved. But once you get past this and it's set, it's really just clicking dice and knowing and then deciding what you want to do. The basic gist of the system is whenever you're rolling, you're looking for at least one success.
And there are certain skills I know where it's really important to have a lot of successes, like combat checks, that means more damage. And then there's other ones like crafting where you just need 1 success and then you want to have as many advantages as possible. That influences what things you can add to.
Absolutely.
Depends on what you're doing.
I don't know if there's any way to add pictures across the top row, but I can add tokens on your sheets. So if anybody has any pictures that they want, feel free to DM me or drop them in the chat, and I'll gladly make tokens for people.
Haven't figured anything out yet on that.
Looks at Rainbow expectantly.
Are you wanting me to make ones for everyone? I
Okay.
can if I have time, but
I'm not. I'm just teasing you.
you would want one. Mister, I want a token for a one shot that's never going to be used again.
She was beautiful.
Okay, yeah, she was rad.
And she survived where most of her team did not.
True.
Bravely ran away.
You gotta do what you gotta do, man.
Remember, kids, maybe don't blindly trust the Imperial agent that's in your party.
Right. All
Yeah,
right.
it's
Well, if
just
there are no more
that's all.
questions or concerns, I think we'll probably wrap this up here. Now, I am available again at any time. Feel free to bug me. Questions, concerns, ideas. Please reach out to me. We will get started. First thing, we're going to jump right into it at the start of session 1. Don't worry, because I know you guys don't know a whole lot about the plot. It will reveal itself very quickly in this campaign. However, we are going to start right in the thick of things, jump back to get a bit of our plot, and then jump forward.
Gotcha.
Sounds good.
All right. I cannot wait for next week. It's going to be amazing. Just as way advanced notice, the week of Christmas, we probably will not be playing, which would be the 24th. So,
Definitely.
yeah. Now, I don't know. The game following that would be New Year's Eve. So I imagine we probably won't be playing that day either, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably not.
So
We have to work that day.
I don't know. I might have New Year's Day off. I'm not sure. But just because of how the holidays are falling, we'll probably postpone those 2 weeks. Unfortunately, it's just the way that it ended up. But we'll have a good couple solid weeks to get our feet wet, and then we'll go from there. At about I don't know if it's not apparent, but maybe 6 sessions in, we'll do kind of a test and see how things are going. If people want to keep going with the campaign, we'll keep going, so to speak. I don't know if we'll be done with the plot, but I'm guessing this initial one probably 6, maybe 8 weeks. We'll see. I'm not always the best at judging that.
Players can drag things out.
Yes.
Very.
I will try not to hit you guys with analysis paralysis, nor will I try to just completely railroad you as well. All right, sounds good. I will leave Fantasy Grounds up probably for another 30 minutes if you guys want to dink around. If at any point you guys are like, oh, I'd really like to get on and mess around with my character sheet, just let me know. I can always leave it open or open it for somebody. But I typically sleep between the hours of midnight and 6:30.
Sounds good.
Sounds good, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for
Mhm.
coming, everybody, and I cannot wait for next week.